The following feature presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
Power on.
It's showtime.
Boldly go where no one has gone before.
Warp 1, engage!
Welcome to a journey through time, space, and pop culture. A journey through a career in the special effects industry. Welcome to the Max EFX Podcast. In this podcast, we talk to Max Cervantes, who has worked in the special effects industry since 1985. He's worked on many of your favorite TV shows and movies, like Star Trek, Starship Troopers, and Beetlejuice. I'm your host, Kevin Toft. I'm here with Max. This is episode 4, Science Fiction Fan Families. Hey, Max, how's it going?
Hey, Kevin. Great to see you and hear you again.
Boy, last month's show was a fun one. I loved learning about all the cool effects you were involved in on Beetlejuice.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. That Beetlejuice episode was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that I talked to that really enjoyed learning about that too. But today's show sounds like it's going to be amazing too. Can you tell us what's in store on this episode?
This show's going to be a little different than normal. You know, with the pandemic going, we all can't be together with our families like we'd like to be. And so I thought in today's episode, we could examine science fiction and families. You know, because many times we create families out of science fiction. One of the first families I ever got really close to in science fiction fandom were my good friends, John, Bijo, and Lora Trimble. So, and I've known all these people for a very long time. They're my very dear, sweet friends. And I wanted people to get to know them like I know them. John and Bijo Trimble were the people who were responsible for starting the Save Star Trek letter writing campaign back in 1967. And they also then were responsible with getting the Enterprise shuttle named Enterprise through another letter writing campaign. And well, they're really super great people. And I just thought everybody out there should know them as well as I do. So with that, let's bring on John, Bijo, and their daughter, Lora. First of all, I wanted to ask, how did the two of you meet up?
Okay, this sounds like a sitcom. Forey Ackerman, you're going to have to explain him someday.
Only those of us of a certain age remember and cherish and loved Forey.
Well, he would throw 3-day birthday parties for himself, and
Over the Thanksgiving weekend.
yes, and in the lovely idea that you'd only come to the day you'd been invited. Well, he had so many friends in the movie industry and everything. Everybody would show up for each day to see what they were missing.
So all the people who'd been invited on Friday would show up again on Saturday.
And Sunday.
And then the Friday and Saturday people would show up on Sunday just to see who came to all those.
Forey never got that. So anyway, there wasn't any place to sit. And so a bunch of fans, well, not a bunch, a few, had snaffled some chips and dip and crawled under Forey's baby grand piano. Now this meant that everybody was kind of crossing legs over, and so John arrives and finds...
I knew several of the people who were under the piano, and they said, "Hey, Trimble, come on over here, and you won't get stepped on."
He crawled under the piano and John and I met, and instead of discussing science fiction, we spent the evening telling stupid officer stories.
So then, Lora, how old were you when your mom and dad were still running the Equicons back in '76 and such?
1976, I would have been 9.
Oh, so you're just old enough to be sentient and let loose upon the world.
No, we were at a very young age. I remember walking around the conventions at 5. But remember, conventions back then were much smaller. And
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We could safely turn the kids loose.
And everybody knew who we were.
Oh, yeah.
So there's nothing we were going to do.
Oh, you were safe.
Get back to my parents.
Right.
I mean, I remember at 5 I sat at the registration desk and put stickers on people's badges.
Perfect.
That was my job.
Wow.
So
wow.
I love that, man. That's, I've been to Comic-Con, I've been to all these. I feel like I really missed out on your guys' stuff because it sounds like it was even more family-like. I mean, being around fans and doing cons, there's a family type feel because it's all people of a similar, interest in mind. But man, that really sounds like you guys had a real family experience going on there, top to bottom.
Well, we tried to make the conventions a good experience for everybody, including the volunteers who are usually just kind of, Cinderellas off in the.
Yeah. Speaking as someone who was a volunteer at my very first convention, and I did it because I was poor. And this way, by helping out, I got to see really cool things that other people didn't get to see, like Leonard Nimoy backstage getting ready before he went on stage to go speak to everybody. But then at the end of the convention, if there was money left over, those of us who were volunteers would get some of our money back, But I really loved being in the thick of things like that, being a volunteer from the beginning, because you got to see a lot more of the convention by being a volunteer. I mean, I'm still amazed, John and Bijo, with that bridge set that you guys built and had on display at Equicon 76. Nobody had ever done anything like that before in fandom.
No, we built it in our backyard, and then we moved it over to the neighbor's backyard, other fans, because our backyard had just become a jungle. And so they, this bridge set is being built. In back of us, the whole block was apartment buildings. And so people would come out on their balcony and look and go, what are those people doing?
So now, wait a minute. You guys built a replica of the TOS bridge of the Enterprise?
Yeah, a full scale bridge set.
And open the same way where the camera would have been on TV, right? So it wasn't like all the way. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We had the upper section where the various stations were. And then we had the captain's chairs and the console in front of us.
Right.
All right.
The helmet
9
navigation
million resin buttons.
All right. So
yes.
wait a minute. I got to ask now. Research. How do you get the scale, the size, the paint colors, the right buttons? How the heck did you guys come up with all that?
You have to have a whole bunch of fans who are that crazy enough to take all these measurements and so on.
Wow.
We had been on the original bridge set.
Oh.
Quite a few times.
A number of times. We've watched episodes being filmed. We've been allowed to kind of wander around up there and look at stuff because they knew they could trust.
You smuggle a tape measure in with you?
No, actually, we had a young fan working on it, Randy Yamamoto, who literally he found out how tall all the actors were, and he literally re-engineered it from there.
What? He did math based off the height of the actor?
Yep.
Yep.
Now, John and I are not quite that precise. We let other people do that if they want to.
We had an architect, we had several engineers, we had a bunch of fans, and these guys just all figured it all out. And then the architect took over and made the plan up, got it all set. We built it, and then we started putting all the little doodads.
And then, of course, it had to be built so it could be taken down and moved.
Yeah. It came apart in pieces, very much like the original bridge set did.
Fit in a U-Haul truck.
Just curious. How did you guys get on the set? What did you do there? I want to know what that was like.
Let us explain about meeting Gene Roddenberry.
What?
We were at the Worldcon in 1966 over the Labor Day weekend in Cleveland, Ohio. And Gene had brought 3 episodes of Star Trek and
3
costumes to show off for the fans. Because remember, it hadn't been seen yet.
Oh my.
This was before it aired.
And
Labor Day weekend.
Some of the writers were suggesting Gene that he could, show it off to us because he was already getting flack from everybody, saying, "Oh, this won't last."
All the empty suits.
It's such a dumb idea.
Wow.
Whoever heard of anything like this? And so he showed up with these things. Now, I was running a futuristic fashion show, and I was doing practicing with my ladies because they were all amateurs, and bless their heart. And this guy from the convention committee comes in and he says, "We didn't even want this, but now that we have it, you have exactly 1 hour, no more."
Oh my.
And I said, get out of my face. So he went away. And a little while later, he shows up and he says, "We have 3 more costumes for your fashion show." I said, "No."
There's this big Hollywood producer wants us to put.
And I said, "Who is it?" My mother used to sew costumes for
Right.
Warner Brothers, and I've been hanging around, sets and so on for a long time. And they said, "Gene Roddenberry." I said, "I've never heard of him." Well, we promised him. Well, unpromise him. He's not getting in my show. And a few minutes later, I hear this deep voice say, "Are you B. Joe Trimble?" I turn around, good-looking man standing there. I have no idea who he is. He says, "My name is Gene Roddenberry. Can I take you for coffee?" Well, so we went for coffee, and 20 minutes later, that silver-tongued devil had talked us 3 costumes into the show.
That's
One
amazing. Which costumes were they?
Costumes. Okay, 2 of them from iMud,
Oh, okay.
and the one was the shawl that looked like there wasn't anything
Right.
but the shawl, and then
Yeah,
the
yeah,
red fleecy dress. And the other one was
Right.
the little
Crossover outfit that
from what are little girls made of.
Oh yes,
And-
yes. What the female android
Yes.
wore.
And he had hired models from, of course, from Cleveland. And when I said no, they were looking at losing a job. I mean, who hires models on the weekends like this?
Right.
So they said, "We'll help you. We'll start them. And we'll help with the makeup and everything." They were desperate, and I finally said, "Okay, fine." And so afterwards, Roddenberry turns to us and says, "Next time you're in Hollywood, call me. We'll do lunch." And I thought, yeah.
Right.
You hear that all the time, for goodness sake.
Also, remember,
Right.
he's in Cleveland, so he's thinking, "I'm never going to see these people again." He had no idea we lived in LA.
But anyway, yeah, so the first time that John's business took him down to LA, I said, "I'm going to,
calls bluff.
So I called, and I didn't know this at the time, but the door between his office and his secretary's office was always open. When I said, "B. Joe Trimble,"
His secretary said, "B. Joe Trimble?" And he reached over and picked up the phone.
Wow.
And
Wow.
said, "Where are you?"
"Where are
Wow.
you? Come for lunch."
That's
That's amazing.
And he was so thrilled that the fans really, really liked his show that he kept letting him on the set until the lawyers discovered what he was doing, because you can't have that. Since we had all, basically done Gene a favor and all of that, he let us on all the time. And that was something kind of special. The kids were still very small, so they kind of grew up seeing Star Trek as they grew up. But then on the way, we were second season. We're on our way home. We're talking about the fact that we have seen everybody looking really sad. I had finally given up talking to anybody else and went over to craft services, which is basically the Ray R. O'Reilly of any set.
Right.
If you want to know what's going on.
Exactly. On any set, if you want to know what the dirt is and what's going on, you go hang out at the craft services table.
That's right.
I've been around enough to know that that's it.
Is that
Yeah.
her hair and makeup?
Yep. Oh my God, yes.
That's
Actors
right.
will tell their hair and makeup people things that they won't tell their
Right, they become your
families.
therapist. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. I like it.
So I asked this guy, and he said, "Well, the word is," and nothing's official yet, but the word is that they're going to cancel Star Trek at the end of the second season. And in those days, if you did not go 3 full seasons, you'd never,
Get into syndication.
you'd just be on a shelf somewhere.
So we're still living in Oakland at the time. So we're in the car on our way back up the Central Valley. Now, this was before Interstate 5.
Oh, wow.
So we're driving up the Central Valley for
Right.
hours. And we're discussing with each other the fact that the whole tenor of the set and everything seemed so different. It was so down, whereas before it hadn't been. And I said to her, to my darling wife, I said, it's so sad that they're going to cancel Star Trek after the second season. There ought to be something we could do about that. No, I should have known better.
It's entirely his fault, see?
And
we discussed it. Now, we had no template. Nobody, to our knowledge, had ever done this before. Run a mail campaign. Of course, it was a mail campaign in those days because you had to be terribly rich or a big corporation to own a computer. But I said, we can't do it until we find out from Gene.
Right.
But anyway, we kind of worked out various things we could do. And I said, now we have to phone Gene and find out if he's thrown in the towel. Because if he has, there's no sense in doing this. And Gene said, and Gene was a storyteller, keep this in mind. And he said, my God, I just came out of a meeting with staff saying if there was only some way that we could reach the fans.
And we fell in his lap.
How about that? How about that? Now, I'm way on the outside of this, but who did they want you to write the letters to? Did you have to write Lucille Ball directly, or like
No. She had no control.
It was Desi Lou that, right?
Yeah, it was Desi Lou, but NBC.
Okay, so that's where it was. So it didn't matter what Lucy wanted.
Well, no, because the Desilu people, they wanted the show to keep running because the longer a show runs, the more money the studio makes off of the show. And they don't have to invest that much more money to keep the show going. It's the higher ups at NBC you got to convince.
I mean, they practically lost the studio over financing Star Trek and
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible at the same time. Two shows with lots of special effects.
But people really liked both of those, as I remember, didn't they?
Well, yeah, they both ended up being huge hits, but convinced the studios of that beforehand. And when I say studios, I mean the people at the network.
Yeah.
So how did you guys go about this now? You decided, you talked to Gene, and he says, okay, what? What do you do next?
Well, we said, you can't be part of this. I love this because, he was a producer. You can't tell a producer he can't do something. I said, because they're going to blame you for this. Well, they did anyway, but his hands were more or less clean. And so I said, we have to do it through fan donations and so on, but not without your money. And then what we did was we asked Tricon 2, the very convention that had introduced Star Trek, and they sent us out their mailing list, which would never happen again.
We had a big book dealer that we knew, and he sent us his mailing list.
And then I went to Gene and I said, don't you get fan mail? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, who answers it? And he said, I don't know. Well, it turned out
they had a service that did that.
Not at that time. They did shortly after that. And then shortly after that, it was us. But so
we went to the Paramount, by that time it was Paramount, mailroom and said, do you have any fan mail for Star Trek? And they said, oh, thank God. And they led us to a room and there were bags and bags of mail. Nobody knew where to send it
oh my gosh,
or picked it up.
Or what to do with it.
Yeah. And we could not take it. We actually just
we had a Volkswagen Bug. I couldn't pack all that stuff in
we
there.
brought home about 5 bags, and all we did was take the return address off the envelopes. We couldn't even open the envelopes at that point because our goal was a lot of people to write to, not answering letters.
So
right.
We'd asked, Bijou interviewed a bunch of secretaries to find out what sort of mail would they get that would cause them to put it across their boss's desk.
As compared to stuff that was just crazy and they'd throw out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we came up with these rules of what to do and what not to do. We essentially, told people the kind of format to use. We weren't telling them what to say, just the format to use, how to do this sort of thing, and asked them to each write a letter, copy the information that we sent out, and send it out to 10 of their friends and ask their 10 friends to each write a letter and do the same thing.
Wow.
So 10
That's
plus
amazing.
10 plus 10 plus 10 plus 10.
Right.
And
it worked. It worked very successfully, far more than we thought. Now, at this point, by the way, our entire effort went blind. We had no idea how much was coming into the studios. We had no idea what was happening here, but we had people who were getting very, very clever. Somebody put the letter through Mensa, and someone was looking up the holding companies of NBC and sending letters not to the company newsletter.
Oh, wow.
Newsletters are always hungry. And, after a while, without any warning at all from us, NBC came online and said,
voiceover at the tail end of episode.
Was Star Trek's been picked up for a third season. Please stop writing letters.
And so, of course, several thousand fans promptly wrote them thank you letters.
I wish.
Oh my goodness!
I wish that was a video of that.
That would be amazing if somebody out there. I mean, nobody in fandom would have had a recording device that could have done so. But that's amazing to think that back then that the network actually got on and made an audio broadcast at the end of an episode saying, "We have heard and gotten all of your letters requesting Star Trek to be kept on the air. Please stop. Yes, we're going to keep Star Trek on for another season." That's amazing. Nobody's ever done that before.
No.
And people keep saying, well, how many letters did actually come in? We have no idea. They've never admitted to anything. And we had one snarky guy came out for some Star Trek thing out here. And
we have been originally told by some guy who came out from New York, who had worked for a computer company that did a lot of NBC's computer work at the time, that they'd gotten 10,000 letters.
Wow.
Now, we have no idea.
But the guy that was talking to us from NBC, he said, well, there wasn't any amount. All we got was 50,000 letters.
Oh,
and I said, wow,
50?
If fandom can change your mind with only 50,000 letters, we're much more powerful than I thought we were.
Exactly.
Well, I'm just wondering if they calculate it like Nielsen things. When I say, okay, one letter is equal to, that every person that likes it is going to write it. So it represents X amount of the fans plus this many more, would be my guess.
Yeah.
They'd have to do something.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
But,
whatever it was, it worked.
Yeah, way to go.
What it did do was it tapped into fandom and showed that fandom was willing to work and they were willing to do stuff for good things. So other things happened, like Special Olympics things and other charity things started to pop up at conventions and become really a focal point for a lot of fans. And the fandom in general, not just Star Trek, but science fiction fandom in general, has done amazing things for some charities.
Yeah.
I remembered in conjunction with that you guys would also have blood drives at the conventions. I seem to remember something like that. Even back then, it shows that fandom was very service-oriented and wanting to help other people.
Yeah.
I actually none of us knew this. I mean, nobody had tapped into this particular part of fandom. It was so cool.
So I'm curious, after the success of the campaign, did you guys get to visit the set after? And possibly did they attribute that success of the third season to you guys? Was there a triumphant return to the set?
No.
Paramount has never acknowledged us because they're dreadfully afraid that if they
that will
do,
want a piece of the action.
Oh, well, I thought maybe I was thinking Gene would say, oh, yeah, come on back, or that you called Gene and you got to do it again
as a matter
after.
of fact, yes,
Because you
we
said
did.
it was somber on your last visit. I was wondering if you got to see the other side of that.
Oh, we were invited back to the set.
Okay.
The studio very seldom knew who was on the set at any given time.
Right.
Now,
right.
unfortunately, as part of the whole renewal thing, I'm sure that NBC blamed Gene for the whole campaign.
Yeah.
So he was bumped up out of line production to being executive producer, which meant a lot less than it does these days.
Right.
And they brought in Fred Freiberger, who'd never done a science fiction thing before, and moved Dorothy Fontana out as the script person and brought in the guy with all
Because she
that
was the
change.
chief.
Yeah.
She was the chief story editor, right?
Yeah. And they
Yeah.
brought in somebody, singer, I don't remember his full name.
He wore his shirt open to his belly button, all sorts of gold chains, and kept calling women chickie.
Whoa.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we met these guys and we thought, oh, the show's doomed.
They're trying to kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
And,
definitely would
yeah.
not have done a good job of it.
No.
No.
So from
So-
there, then, what got you interested in running your own conventions?
Okay. Now, as science fiction fans, we've been involved in conventions for years. The World Science Fiction Convention was started in 1939.
Right.
There had been conventions before that, and then there were regional conventions held various places in the country. And we've been going to those for a long time. We've been running the art shows at the World Science Fiction Conventions since 1960, the year we got married. And so we've been involved in conventions, ordinary science fiction fandom, for years. And it was just seemed like the thing to do to
So what year was the very first Equicon?
73.
No, 73. That was really not us. It was thrown by a fan from Santa Barbara, whose name I've forgotten now. But he basically stayed drunk for most of the convention. So people kept coming to us for answers to what was going on.
They ran conventions previous to this, previous to Star Trek.
Right.
There was the
Right.
Fantasy Film Fans International Convention.
Yeah, we Filmcon.
And it involved everything, horror films and fantasy films and westerns and all sorts of stuff.
That was one of the highlights of Equicon to me, because I got to see movies up on a big screen in a theater like environment that I had never gotten to see before, like Forbidden Planet. That was the very first time I ever got to see Phantom of the Paradise. And you guys showed it at Equicon late at night, and it was amazing to get to see these things, because otherwise as a kid I'd only ever seen like Forbidden Planet on TV at home on a black and white screen, but to get to see it there in a theater setting up on the big screen in color was amazing.
One of the people that worked on the convention was a flack at Universal, and he was able to get us
Well, he got us Quester,
yeah.
and he got us several other
He
things.
also
Wow.
got you guys all the King Kong films, because
Yeah,
we
yeah.
used to. My favorite thing was the film rooms would run 24/7. If Matt could
I
find
remember
somebody that could follow instructions, he'd put them on a projector, and we always had the monster movie room that just like 24/7 ran Godzilla and King Kong and the Ray Bradbury,
Oh my God.
all the. It's my favorite room.
That
that's
sounds
in,
so
because it just-
cool.
Oh, believe me, Kevin,
They
it was.
do cartoons in the morning,
Yeah.
on Saturday and stuff like that.
Right.
So we invite the hotel staff to bring their kids and sit them in the room when they were running the cartoons.
Now, that is the way, if you're running a convention, you want to be able to get into the closets and the basement and everything to find more cables and more this and more that.
Yes. Get the staff on your side.
Tell the staff that they can bring in their kids on Sunday morning and watch cartoons.
And that was kind of our job too, as little kids, is we would find the staff kids that were shy and didn't want to go to the dealer's room or didn't want to go into the film room and make friends with them and get them comfortable with doing that.
I have a similar theory when I'm gambling in Vegas. One
of my other memories from Equicon is that bridge, which, if I seem to remember, was from Spock's station, Uhura's station, the turbo lift, and then Scotty's station, and then you had the captain's chair and the helm and navigation station. And in that same room, I seem to remember you had a display of models. And it had like you were looking into windows of like shadow boxes.
Oh.
And in doing so, it told the story of Forbidden Planet using what I think were Mego action figures on little diorama sets. And it was amazing. It just blew my little mind back then, seeing these little miniatures with the action figures.
Mom and Dad sought out the background people, the makeup people, the hair people, the costumers, the model builders, the sound people, all of the tech stuff, because that's the stuff the fans were really interested in as well. I mean, the actors were great, but these people were so nice that they would take a 16-year-old kid or a 14-year-old kid and sit in the lobby with him for an hour discussing how they'd done something or looking at their models and giving them honest opinions.
You remember the lovely costumer from Star Trek who brought along the display of all of the insignia and so on, and I know that Max, you went up and had a talk with him, and he was.
Yes, with Bob Fletcher.
Fletcher, yes.
At your very last Equicon, which was held at the Sheraton Marriott, the Sheraton Hotel at Universal. You got Bob Fletcher, who was the original costume designer for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and all the way up to Star Trek IV. And he was there, and he brought this beautiful shadow box of all of these original insignia patches and jewelry pieces that he had done for the different Star Trek movies up until that point. And he was so kind and sweet to me. He gave me like almost a half hours of his time just standing in the hallway of the hotel and answering all my questions and everything. And he let me get a picture of himself with that piece. And I just was flabbergasted. Somebody like
what year was this?
This would have been like the middle 80s, I'm thinking, like maybe 87.
No, it wasn't that far out because I graduated, I would have graduated high school in 85. So it had to have been 83 or 84.
But that was amazing because, again, you guys got people like that, the people that the fans really wanted to see and hear from, like Bob Fletcher and all these other behind the scenes people like Mike Miner and such. I mean, God bless Mike Miner.
That last Equicon was thrown because they asked me what I wanted for my birthday, and I said another Equicon.
And what better birthday party could you want?
Oh no, that's the greatest party in the world.
Because they were all over Easter weekend, which was either my birthday or very close to it. So
right, and I'll have you know, I was almost excommunicated from my Roman Catholic Mexican American family because of going to that very first Equicon in '76. I had to ditch Easter with my family. And anybody tell you, age or no.
Do you remember Bob Burns doing the Easter ape?
I do. The Easter ape. He would wear his Tracy the gorilla costume and put bunny ears on it and going about handing out chocolate Easter eggs to all the people. That was hilarious.
The kids didn't know what to do.
Oh no, of course not. What are they going to do? There's this giant ape thing with bunny ears, but he's nice to me and he's handing me chocolate. So, hey, what are you going to do? You take the chocolate and run with it.
The people in the hotel who were not with the convention, they would see Tracy walking along with this big basket that we made up for him, and they would, not know what to do, and then he'd hold out a little toy or candy, and they'd run up to him. The kids would, not the parents. The parents shall say. I'm thinking, we're starting something here that could be a real problem, but it never was. Nobody ever,
And isn't it funny? It's the little kids who are more trusting of this whole situation than the adults. But see, that's what I mean about family.
I was just thinking when you guys were talking about, so that was the same season during Easter's when you guys were having your cons. I started taking my son to doing cons regularly. It was WonderCon, which was happening right around Easter. And I just remember there was a point for him where, there's it was all about the Easter Bunny. And then it was like, wait a minute, convention? Not so interested in the Easter Bunny. He wanted to go to the con.
You remember those crazy kids that would, our convention was pretty loose compared to a lot of things. We didn't have a lot of serious rules. You had to be nice. That was pretty much it. So I ended up with this mother who was like mouth breathing right in my face. Do you know what those people are doing out there? And I said, well, as far as I know, they're dissecting a large bunny. Why? And she said, because the small children, what is this going to do to their little ids? I'm thinking, who outside of Forbidden Planet uses id?
Right.
As a word? and she just gave me hell. And I said, look, this is part of the program as far as these kids are concerned. And so I went out to them with her and I said, look, you can't do this. So don't do this next year, all right? Everybody's standing around looking, oh, yeah, okay, fine. All right. And I said, promise? Absolutely promise.
Specifically, she said, you cannot dissect another bunny next year. This is important. Because the next year they impaled a bunch of Smurfs on the spears and then marched them through the convention and then took them outside.
I remember that.
Because it wasn't a bunny.
I remember that.
That's right. And the mother.
It was a please don't eat the daisies kind of situation.
And the mother rushed up to me and I said, I got nothing.
Ask the kids what they think.
Well, see, that's
the kids all thought it was wonderful.
They're out there not being.
Well, of course, they were having a great time. It's the adults who always end up get their panties in a bunch. To me, conventions are about making a family of your own, not just the family you were born into. Lora was lucky. She was already born into a family of really cool people like this. And so for me, conventions became a more important family than the family I was born into, because my convention family, they liked the same things I did. They didn't make fun of me for the things I like to do. And I was eventually lucky enough to then make money from what I liked to do. And I've had a nice long career at getting to do what I like to do because of conventions. If I hadn't attended Equicon, I wouldn't have met Greg Jean down the line. If I hadn't met Greg Jean down the line, I wouldn't have gotten into the business quite the same way I did. And one thing leads off of another. So, in that same way. So it's to me, conventions are an important part of my family as much as my actual real family.
Like I really missed out on something.
No, you just came into it at a different time, but unfortunately, by the time you came into it, it had become a business, not conventions.
Yeah, that sounded like so much fun.
That's amazing.
What an incredible life we've led.
Yeah. Think about it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We're only scraping the surface here, I would assume.
Well, I didn't get to be part of the letter writing campaign for Star Trek, obviously, because I wasn't born yet. But I did get to be part of the letter writing campaign to have the first space shuttle named Enterprise.
Yep. That's right. That's right.
And that was, we heard that the shuttle was a go and it was a green light. And somebody said to my parents, the first one should be named Enterprise, and the letter campaign started.
All over again.
We essentially did the same letter writing campaign.
Only a lot on computer this time.
And we had everybody. The letters all went to Gerald Ford. It was the president at the time.
Wow. Yeah, because I was about to ask that. I was about to ask that. Who would you then send those letters to, or NASA?
Yeah,
because
President Gerald Ford, and he's the one who said to NASA, I know you've been thinking about naming this first one Constitution, but I'd rather like the name Enterprise. So when the president tells you he likes, you paint out the old name and paint in Enterprise.
And Mom got to go to the Rollout.
yeah, I got to go to the rollout, but they didn't know what to do with me. You know, I mean, I obviously was somehow attached to Star Trek, but I wasn't one of the actors. And some brilliant little office worker, I hope she got a good promotion, came up to me and said, "Would you like a press pass?"
Oh, heck yeah.
And a friend of ours, and he was standing there, and he said, "Take the press pass. We get a lot more booze than the VIPs." I did, and it was the opening for several years of being able to go over to Caltech with my press pass.
Now, for the rollout of the Enterprise, when the shuttle was finally rolled out, where was that
Edwards.
held at? Edwards Air Force Base in the north
Yeah, no, Palmdale.
north of Palmdale.
Palmdale. It was at
Okay.
Palmdale. Edwards was
Wow.
where some of the
Because
landings.
to be there when they rolled out the Enterprise, and you had Mr. Roddenberry and his wife Majel there, and the rest of the cast of Star Trek were all there, being treated like the celebrities they should be, and that yet you guys got to be there for that. That's amazing.
I remember being really excited about
Right.
that being Enterprise,
Yeah.
you know, and then I was confused. I'm still very young, going, wait a minute, the one that's going up isn't named Enterprise. It was just all the test ones. I was like, man,
That was the thing we
that
didn't
was-
know.
in
we-
space
we
should
were
have
not
been
informed.
Enterprise.
We weren't informed that it was the test shuttle. It wasn't.
Yeah, well, neither was I, and boy, was I perturbed.
Yeah, it was used. The Enterprise was used as the
Yeah.
test.
If we had known that, then we would have asked for the first shuttle to go into
Yeah.
space to be named Enterprise. But
It just seems like a ripoff. I said it's like somebody behind the scenes, like, oh yeah, I'll show you. It's like,
No,
Come
it was
on.
just. It just wasn't public knowledge. And Enterprise has been the name of experimental vessels all through U.S. naval history. You know, so one of the first aircraft carriers was named Enterprise. There have been other
Right.
vessels back in naval history named Enterprise. So I mean, it's fitting in a way that the first experimental shuttle, the one that they did for flight for drop tests and glide tests and sort of thing, was named Enterprise. So
Wow, that's amazing. So, well, I was going to ask another question, but with the global lockdowns, have you held or attended any virtual conventions or have any plans to do so? So I know that that's been a thing that several virtual conventions have been run this year.
Yeah, there have been, and I've been by. Well, I went by Comic-Con and to a program, and then there's a convention back east called Arisia, and it's another convention that was run, in that manner. I do like what some conventions, including Comic-Con, have done, which is to basically have a vendor's room where they put up everybody, whatever so that people can contact people who sell things, which is very cool.
yeah, that is.
I went through and browsed through parts of Comic-Con. And they
Okay.
did the virtual thing, which was cool, and watched some stuff. But it's not the same. I mean, it was a great
Yeah.
idea, but it is nowhere near the same as being there in person
Yeah.
yeah,
and seeing all.
Yeah,
I mean,
of
Comic-Con
course,
is one
of
of those
course.
things that you either love or you want to run screaming from it, because people can't. It's like the mothership landed and all the people are coming to it. It's
like when you walk
Amazing.
into the dealer's room the first time and realize you need to have binoculars on to read the signs at the other end.
Right.
Yeah, Comic-Con is an experience all of its own.
After the first time we went back to Comic-Con after it had grown so big, I didn't want to go back again. But then we went back when we were fan guests of honor in
for the 50th of Star Trek.
Mm.
the
Wow.
50th anniversary of Star Trek, and that was cool. And I began to get back into the whole idea, and then it's wonderful for people watching. That's
Yes.
always one of my favorite activities.
Oh,
We
yes.
go up on
Oh,
Hollywood
yes.
Boulevard and people watch. I mean, so
Right.
you're just going to it and being able to go up to somebody who's in just a dynamite costume, whatever it is, and
Yes.
compliment them on their costume.
Yes.
And especially if they are not the perfect figure for something. There, so many people are now being shamed for their size or whatever.
No, it's
That isn't really fair.
no, it's not.
We had that magnificent fairy queen, white satin and big wings and the scepter and everything, and she was a good-sized lady, but she had done a beautiful job on her costume, and that was worthwhile. So,
And there are still little conventions around. You just have to look for them.
That's why I kind of like going to the smaller conventions as well, like Stan Lee's Kamikaze. There's a little smaller conventions. They're not quite so manic like Comic-Con is. I mean, I was a judge at Comic-Con in San Diego many times. Martin Sanquish, who runs the costume contest, has had me be a judge for him. And that's a lot of fun because you get to see these things up close. And I always like going backstage when I'm a judge to see people's work up close so I can, really see them and see their work and compliment them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, that's a lot of fun. I love, like when I go to, there's a big costume event. I'm part of a big Harry Potter group here in Los Angeles that going to Universal Hollywood, and we would normally have had at this time of year a big costume event where everybody goes in their best, Wizarding World clothing.
Dressed
and for me, the
9
most
3/4.
Thank you. That is the one. That is the one. And for me, the most fun is not being there, but it's getting to see all the people's cool interpretations and original things. And for me, that's the most fun, is getting to see all these people's work and taking pictures of them and talking about them. How did you do this? What did you make this from? And that's so much fun to me.
And John, just to let you know, I don't have a problem with the cons with a lot of people because I'm 6'8". So I can, to me, they're all down at, it's just a sea of hair to me. I just,
Sorry, my husband's 6'4", and we have a friend who's 6'3", but they're both very wide guys, and they're not. So they were kind of, everybody move, like we just
right.
walked behind them
Brute
and
squad.
they plowed the road.
on the other hand, Kevin would be the one who could, just say, "Who do you see out there that?"
Right? Yeah.
I've had that job at amusement parks and at cons, at locating things, people, whatever. Somebody's looking for it. Just give me a second, and it's over there.
Well, I think we're about wrapping this up. We want to thank you guys so much, Lora, John, Bijo, for coming on our podcast. And I really just want to thank you for all your great stories but we wanted to know, though, where can our listeners get a hold of each of you on social media if fans out there would like to contact?
Well, they have a page on Facebook. It's John and Bijo Trimble.
Okay.
So it's both of them. So you can actually reach them that way. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram as Lora Bame. So it's spelled Lora, and the last name is B as in boy, O-E-H-M. Go ahead.
And for John and Bijo, could you spell that out? Because some people may not be understanding on how to spell Bijo, let alone Trimble.
Oh, all right. My name is actually a shortening of Betty Joanne, and so
That's capital B, small J-O. John is how you think of it spelled, and the last name is Trimble, Trimble.
And that's on
Just
Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, again, guys, thank you so very much.
Welcome.
Hey, Max, that was a great time talking to your friends. So we want to thank John, Bijo, and Lora Trimble for coming on the show today. Just absolutely amazing. We'll be back next month right here on the Skywalking Network, where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes, classic Marvel Star Wars comics, the Neverland Clubhouse, and get this, the new Resilience Squadron, which focuses on disabilities, special needs, and inclusion. Do not miss this one. It sounds like a very interesting one. I will definitely be checking it out. And the flagship show, which you should never, ever miss, Skywalking Through Neverland. So in that, I would say, folks, come see us on our Facebook group page. Like us, tell your friends. We would love to hear your feedback on the group page there. We'd love to see comments on the shows, give us ideas. We'd love to know what you're thinking. So you can leave us a direct message there, whatever you like. You can send us a tweet at SkywalkingPod and use the hashtag Max EFX, MAX EFX.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you all next month.